As we grow up after being born, we soon busy ourselves with our studies, career and family. But what is the purpose of it all? Even after attaining and enjoying high reputation, great wealth, lavish material enjoyment and foods, we still crave for more, constantly worrying that we might lose what we have, while wanting everything to be even better. In this short life of ours, every one of us have to withstand various forms of suffering. Anyone can get ill. Even great personalities fret getting old, ill and weak. Awaiting the moment of farewell at the point of death is even more sad. Where then is true happiness? When we realize our lack of direction and helplessness, we see the need to seek refuge. Believing that the supernormal and divine beyond this world exists and governs everything, we naturally develop feelings of fear, respect, and worship. This is how religion originated. Along with the evolution of different societies, religions keep changing. From the primitive worship of the elements of nature, such as those of the heavens, earth, mountains, and rivers, it became the worship of spirits, ancestors, and gods, both in terms of many and one. In the folk worship of gods and spirits, people pray for safety, alleviation of misfortune and disasters as they hope for wealth, happy marriages, and of such. Many worship the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas as they would the gods, praying for fulfillment of worldly favors, wishing for wealth, children, transformation of bad luck, and a life without obstacles. In fact, the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, with their great compassion, do indeed alleviate suffering. However, they are not of the same nature as the worldly gods. The world-famous scientist Albert Einstein once said, "If there is any religion that would cope with modern scientific needs, it would be Buddhism." In the words of the outstanding Nobel Prize-winning philosopher Lord Bertrand Russell, Buddhism is a combination of both speculative and scientific philosophy. It advocates the scientific method and pursues that to a finality that may be called rationalistic. These words give us a glimpse into why Buddhism is one of the three great religions of the world. What is it that makes Buddhism different from religious folk beliefs? How do the Buddhist teachings benefit the individual, his peers, society, and the world at large? How can one become a Buddhist with the right understanding? In 623 BC, more than 2,500 years ago, in Kapila Vastu of ancient northern India, Prince Siddhartha was born. He later renounced his status in order to cultivate his spirituality, realizing the ultimate truth of life and the universe. He became enlightened, becoming one with perfect wisdom and character, the historical Buddha. The Buddha is not a god who controls the fate of humanity. He clearly taught us that be it in the heavens above or the hells below, they are all of one's own making. One's fortune or misfortune is determined by one's wholesome and unwholesome thoughts and deeds. What you harvest is dependent on the seeds you sow. The Buddha relied on his own diligent efforts to attain enlightenment. He taught that everyone can follow his teachings and practice and attain enlightenment to become a Buddha like he did. Buddha never asked his followers to blindly accept his teachings without doubt, simply because he is their teacher. He requested them to investigate his teachings and to realize the truth within before acceptance. The Buddha encourages intelligent doubting, questioning and discussion, to not be easily swayed by baseless words, hearsay, authority or any such basis. The spirit of inquiring the truth proves that Buddhism is founded on confident wisdom and not blind faith. The Buddha's teachings arose from the experience of life. From young till old, everyone experiences many dissatisfactions, such as that of birth, aging, sickness and death, being with those we dislike, not getting what we like, and departure from those we like. Why is there so much suffering in life? The Buddha taught that it is caused by attachment, aversion, and delusion. To alleviate the various dissatisfactions of life and to attain true lasting happiness, the Buddha pointed us to the Noble Eightfold Path as the way to liberation. It comprises of right understanding, right thought, right speech, right livelihood, right action, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. The central teachings of Buddhism are the Four Noble Truths. These form the very first teachings the Buddha gave to his first 5 disciples. The Four Noble Truths comprise of the truth of dissatisfactions, the truth of the causes of dissatisfactions, the truth of the end of dissatisfactions, and the truth of the path that leads to the end of dissatisfactions. Understanding and practicing the Four Noble Truths can lead us to effectively solve the problem of dissatisfactions in our lives and to attain true happiness. Just as rare gems are precious, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha are called the Triple Gem. We take the Threefold Refuge in the Triple Gem, just as one who is ill seeks a doctor for a cure. Like a great doctor, the Buddha diagnosed our problems in life and prescribed us the remedy, which is the Dharma. The Sangha of monks and nuns are like nurses who help and remind us to take the medicine of the Dharma, which will cure us of our problems when practiced properly. One who has dissatisfactions, knowing he is ill, can take the initiative to seek the great spiritual doctor, the Buddha's medicine of the Dharma, and use it accordingly to analyze and solve his problems. One should diligently cultivate noble virtues and also befriend monks and nuns who are good followers of the Dharma, so as to better learn how to practice the Dharma in everyday life, so as to eradicate dissatisfaction and be happy Buddhists. Before a Buddha image, we can express our aspiration to commit to the Triple Gem by reciting: I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. However, a simple but solemn refuge ceremony can give rise to much joy and calmness, inspiring firmness of a pure and sacred faith. This is why most people choose to take the refuge conducted and witnessed by a Sangha member.
尽行受皈依佛，
尽行受皈依佛，
尽行受皈依法，
尽行受皈依法，
尽行受皈依僧，
尽行受皈依僧，顶礼一分。各称法名。
皈依佛境，
皈依佛境，
宁舍生命，
宁舍生命，
终不皈依，
终不皈依，
自在天魔外道等，
自在天魔外道等，
皈依如来，
皈依如来，
至真等正觉，
至真等正觉，
是 是我世尊，
是我世尊，
持名故，
持名故，顶礼一拜。
Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa
Buddhang Saranang Gacchami
Dhammang Saranang Gacchami
Dhammang Saranang Gacchami
Sanghang Saranang Gacchami
Sanghang Saranang Gacchami
Dutiyampi Buddhang Saranang Gacchami
Dutiyampi Buddhang Saranang Gacchami
Dutiyampi Dhammang Saranang Gacchami.
Having taken refuge in the Buddha, one should take the Buddhas as one's teacher and not take refuge in the deviant paths, gods and demons. Having taken refuge in the Dharma, one should take Dharmas as one's teacher and not take refuge in the teachings of deviant paths. Having taken refuge in the Sangha, one should take the Sangha as one's teacher and not take refuge in the followers of deviant paths. Presently, there are many Buddhists all over the world. The Buddha's enlightened message of the meaning of life and the universe had long spread from India northwards to China, Japan, Korea, Mongolia and Tibet, and southwards to Sri Lanka, Thailand, Myanmar, Cambodia, Laos and other Southeast Asian countries. As the cultural backgrounds of different lands differ, the Buddha's teachings adapt accordingly to the location's special needs, thus developing into different traditions. As times change, Buddhism continually evolves to suit its followers' changing needs. Although the various ceremonies and cultures of Buddhist traditions look different, the core Buddhist teachings are always the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path, with the one same taste of freedom. In the Theravada or Southern tradition, whenever Buddhist lay followers visit temples on Precept days, they will request Sangha members to administer the Threefold Refuge, so as to remind themselves to observe the precepts well, and to strengthen their faith to remind oneself to always see the Buddha as one's teacher, to follow the Dharma teachings, and to seek guidance and encouragement from well-practiced Sangha members to avoid evil and do good. One who is determined to become a disciple of the Buddha must sincerely accept the Triple Gem into his life by taking the Threefold Refuge. In the Theravada tradition, refuge ceremonies are often conducted with reverence to the Bodhi tree. After the Buddha attained enlightenment, he expressed gratitude to the Bodhi tree, which sheltered him from the elements by showing reverence. As the tree represents the Buddha's enlightenment, it came to be widely respected till this very day. Thus Buddhists in India, Sri Lanka, and other Southeast Asia countries see reverence to the Bodhi tree as an important custom. Tibetan Buddhism, also known as the Vajrayana or esoteric tradition, evolved from the Mahayana tradition in India. Followers of the Vajrayana tradition have to closely follow the guidelines of the guru or teacher. Seeing the guru as the perfect embodiment of the qualities of the Triple Gem, one goes through the Threefold Refuge ceremony. However, one should clearly recognize that the subjects of refuge are the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. The Vajrayana tradition classifies the motivation of disciples of the Triple Gem into three categories. Those who take refuge out of faith in the Triple Gem's ability to help them be free of suffering of the three lower realms belong to the lower scope. Those who take refuge out of fear, seeking liberation from suffering that comes from rebirth in the six realms, belong to the middle scope. Those who take refuge not only for oneself, but for the sake of helping all beings being liberated from all sufferings, belong to the higher scope. The Vajrayana tradition requires disciples to chant the verses of taking refuge thrice in the morning and night, so as to increase faith. Taking refuge in the Buddha, one reverences all representations of the Buddha, including images and paintings. Taking refuge in the Dharma, one not only reverences the sutras or scriptures and sacred texts, but also cherishes every word in them. Taking refuge in the Sangha, one reverences Sangha members donning the robes. Householder disciples of the Triple Gem should not take refuge in the worldly gods. Having taken refuge in the Buddha's teachings, one should not harm any sentient beings. Having taken refuge in the Sangha, one should not seek the company of immoral friends. Having faith in Buddhism, one becomes a disciple of the Triple Gem. One learns to be like the Buddha, practices the Dharma, and reverences the Sangha. As we face the ups and downs of life, with the support of the Triple Gem, we should less easily give rise to dissatisfactions, realizing that all our joys and unhappiness are controlled by ourselves. As long as we diligently improve ourselves spiritually, our future will be full of hope. Most of us are not saints. We have many weaknesses and are easily tempted. If one is unable to master one's fickle mind, it is easy to make mistakes, to do actions which harm others and oneself. Thus, the Buddha taught us the precepts or moral guidelines, which encourages us to curb our desires and rashness, to purify our shortcomings. Just as a good citizen obeys the laws of his country, likewise true Buddhists will take the initiative to observe the 5 basic precepts of not killing, stealing, having sexual misconduct, lying, and taking intoxicants. The 5 precepts. 1. To abstain from killing. 2. To abstain from taking that not given. 3. To abstain from sexual misconduct. 4. To abstain from false speech. 5. To abstain from taking intoxicants. These are Buddhism's 5 precepts. To observe these 5 precepts is to be one with compassion. Observing the 5 precepts is to practice great generosity in 5 ways. The 5 precepts are not meant as a means of restriction, but are for universal protection. In fact, to observe these precepts is a basis of being human. If a person breaks the 5 precepts by killing, stealing, raping, cheating, or by doing any wrong deed after being intoxicated, he has to face the law of the country for disrupting social morality. In Buddhism, doing so means he might lose his opportunity to be reborn human. Instead, one might be reborn as a suffering being in the lower realms of hell, hungry ghosts, or animals. Do not belittle the 5 precepts. It is very simple. The 5 precepts are 5 ways to practice great generosity because they were formed through compassion. How great are the merits from receiving the precepts? It is said in the sutras that the great merits of one who aspires to receive the precepts fill the vastness of space. Why is this so? There are countless living beings in the world. When we give rise to the thoughts of not killing, not stealing, we receive merits from not harming all beings. Imagine the vastness of these merits which fill all space. When we break a precept and kill or steal from one person, the negative karma are comparatively small. If we are to then give rise to the thought of receiving the precepts, all the complete goodness of the Dharma thus gather in us. The merits and the benefits are so great. There are differences between receiving and not receiving the precepts. You should not think, as long as I follow the precepts, there will be merits. Why should I receive them? Let me ask you, if the merits are the same, why do you not receive them? What are you afraid of? You fear breaking the precepts. Anyway, if receiving and not receiving the precepts are the same, the negative karma from not following them is still the same. In the modern context, one who observes the 5 precepts well avoids many unnecessary problems, as he will not endanger himself by killing, stealing, having sexual misconduct, lying, or taking intoxicants. Although the 5 precepts tell us what not to do, they also strongly encourage us to cultivate our virtues. Not harming life, we rid our hatred and learn to develop our loving kindness and compassion. Not stealing, we curb our greed and attachment and learn to be generous and less self-centered. Not having sexual misconduct, we learn to resist temptations of the senses and be content. Not lying, we learn to be truthful, honest and reliable. Not drinking or taking any other intoxicants which cause a loss of mindfulness, we learn to be alert and be clear-minded. Observing the 5 precepts not only benefits oneself, it also brings many benefits to others, our society, country, and the world at large. Not killing, we protect all life. Thus, there will be no murder in the world. Not stealing, we protect everyone's wealth and property. Thus, then there will be no theft or robbery in our world. Not having sexual misconduct, we respect families and personal relationships. Thus, there will be no sex-related crimes in our world. Not lying, we uphold the truth. Thus, there will be no cheating or deceiving in our world. Not taking intoxicants, we protect our physical and mental health. Thus, there will be no careless accidents of any kind in our world. Therefore, observing the 5 precepts not only purifies the individual, it also brings happiness to one's family, harmony and security to society, and peace to the world. In the Buddha's time, after lay people go through the Threefold Refuge and the 5 precepts ceremony, the males are called upasakas and the females upasikas. After receiving the precepts, how should we observe them? One who observes the precept of not killing resolves to never kill another person or oneself. One also avoids harming any animals. To kill personally, to instruct someone to kill, or to use various means such as weapons like guns and knives to cause death, is to break the precept. Observing the precept of not killing does not mean one has to be vegetarian. In its time, the Buddha permitted the Sangha to eat meat with 3 aspects of purity. This form of meat refers to that obtained not from personal killing, not from instructing someone to kill, and not from knowing that the animal was killed for oneself. However, to choose to be vegetarian to cultivate apathy and compassion to the helpless is indeed very praiseworthy. There are those who strictly observe vegetarianism while not reflecting whether one has selfishness, dishonesty, cruelty or jealousy towards others. Whether one is vegetarian or not, the most important thing is to purify our minds. Observing the precept of not stealing is to obtain what one wishes through right means. If others have not given us permission to take what belongs to them, one should simply not take. To take without asking or to obtain through immoral means is to steal. Observing the precept of not having sexual misconduct is to not have carnal relationships beyond one's married partner. To be unfaithful to one's spouse or participate in sexual activities not approved by the law or society is to break this precept. Observing the precept of not lying is to not communicate baseless words and to not deceive others, such as proclaiming oneself to be a saint. This precept of right speech includes not engaging in divisive speech, harsh speech, useless speech, and flowery speech. Observing the precepts of not taking intoxicants to avoid alcoholic drinks, mind-numbing drugs, and any substance abuse. Alcohol by itself is not evil, but it can lead to drunkenness and trouble, such as quarrels and fights. It also wastes away one's health and wealth. Thus, the Buddha advised against drinking. Some fear committing to observing the precepts, as they worry about breaking them. The truth is, whether one commits to observe the precepts or not, doing unwholesome deeds will still bear unwholesome results. In observing the precepts of not killing, stealing, having sexual misconduct, lying, and taking intoxicants, having the intentions of committing evil determines that one has broken the precepts. The Buddha's teachings are open and understanding. If one does not know one is breaching the precepts, one is not considered breaking them. If one has intentions to breach the precepts, even if one does not break them, one is still at fault. If one who observes the precepts accidentally breaches them, one should immediately seek repentance. Repentance refers to having a sense of regret after making a mistake and seeking forgiveness from those we did wrong to. It also includes making the resolution not to repeat the mistake. In Buddhism, one who sincerely repents keeps the integrity of one's precepts pure. However, one cannot escape from the fruits of one's unwholesome deeds. The law of cause and effect links the experience of the flow of life in the present to the past and the future. The intensity of the good or evil done determines the order of these deeds bearing fruit. The good and evil we have done in the past affects our present life, while that which we do in this life will determine our happiness and suffering in this life and the next. However, Buddhism's teaching of cause and effect is not fatalistic. Although the seeds of our past deeds can influence our lives, many conditions are necessary for the fruition to take place. Thus, we can diligently improve to perfect ourselves and to shape our destiny. However, one who has committed serious misdeeds will have to face inevitable consequences, but one can actively do more good to dilute its effects. The 5 precepts can be lightly or seriously breached. Serious breaching breaks the precepts and cannot be repented in the sense that when conditions ripen, one will have to experience the consequences of one's misdeeds. Light breaching of the precepts can be repented. What are the conditions which define breaking the precepts? One who observes the precepts can refer to the Buddhist canon on discipline to determine whether what one has done breached or broke the precepts. One can learn how to better observe the precepts from learning these laws. Breaking the first precept of not killing is the most serious when a human being is killed. This is true if the victim is human, if the killer knew the victim to be human, if the killer had the intention to kill, if the killer used various means to kill, and if the victim was killed. Fulfilling these 5 conditions render the deed of killing a heavy breaching or breaking of the precept of killing, which is unrepentable. Breaking the precept of not killing is dependent on one's intention. If one was unwilling but was forced to kill, one has not broken the precept. Observing the precept of not killing includes the prevention of abortion. Killing the fetus by abortion is an unwholesome act, which is unrepentable. If one kills cows, goats, and other farm domesticated animals, one can repent. However, one still has to experience the effects of one's actions. Even common ants and other household insects should not be killed intentionally. When the stolen indeed belongs to others, when one knows the stolen belongs to others, when one had the thought of stealing, and when one used various means to steal, and when the stolen is of worth to its owner, when the stolen is removed from its original place, and that the thief sees oneself possessing the stolen, and that the owner sees oneself having lost the possession, the act is unrepentable. If the stolen is worth less than 5 cents, the thief had likely breached the precept. In India of the Buddha's time, according to the law of the country of Magadha, stealing that worth 5 cents is punishable by death. According to this logic, stealing any valuable possession enough to be punishable by death breaks the precept. In Buddhism, one should not steal when there are natural or man-made disasters, in times of starvation or sickness, or to look after aged parents. However, taking another's possessions in some situation is not defined as stealing. For example, when one had mistaken another's possession as one's own, or when one had the owner's permission or understanding, knowing that he will let one use without asking, or when one borrowed something temporarily and returns it intact, or when one assumed the object was abandoned, or when one accidentally took another's possession in mental confusion. The precept of committing sexual misconduct requires 4 conditions to be met for it to be seriously breached and unrepentable. When the involved were not spouses, when one was attached to the sexual pleasure, when the oral, anal, or uteral orifices were used, and when the act of sex was committed. If one touches another's body without consent, or verbally harasses another, one breaches the precept, though it is repentable. In Buddhism, false speech encompasses greater and lesser degrees. That which is unrepentable breaching is false speech of the greater degree. It refers to telling a great lie to someone, knowing the other party is a person, having the intention to deceive, and saying oneself is an accomplished saint when one is not, to someone who understands what he means. The lesser degree of false speech includes divisive or disharmonious speech, harsh, vulgar or sarcastic speech, idle or useless speech. These breach the precept, though it is repentable. The precept of not taking intoxicating alcoholic drinks is the only preventive precept, as it prevents the breaking of the other precepts by loss of mindfulness. If the consumed is an intoxicant, and if one is aware that it is an intoxicant, taking it breaches the precept, though it is repentable. Taking drugs, which may cause loss of mindfulness, is also included. In Buddhism, seriously breaching the precept of not killing, stealing, having sexual misconduct, and engaging in unwholesome speech will result in one needing to bear the fruits of one's actions. The light breaching of the precepts can be repented using the methods the Buddha taught. After repentance, the seed of evil planted will dissolve. Those with moral shame, who realize their mistakes and do not repeat them, can practice reciting the precepts and scriptures, bowing to the Buddha, chanting the Buddha's name or mantras, practice visualization meditation, and do other practices to express repentance. Upon experiencing auspicious signs such as the Buddha touching and blessing one's crown, seeing lights of flowers, one's body and mind will feel purified, trouble-free, and at ease. Those who breach the precepts can use their wisdom to reflect how their misgivings arose from the gathering of causes and conditions, and how they will fall away from their parting. To eradicate misgivings, one should first realize the emptiness and ungraspable nature of the stray mind. Realizing the non-birth of delusion, guilt will vanish. This was realized by Shakyamuni Buddha as the universal truth of dependent origination within the nature of emptiness. As each phenomenon arises from a web of interlinking causes and conditions, which are changing unceasingly, changes in them will cause changes in a phenomenon. Understanding this, one will not be disturbed by temporal and illusory phenomena, and be liberated and at ease. Some lay Buddhists feel it is difficult to observe the 5 precepts well in the long run. However, please do not be discouraged. Even if one can observe only 1 or 2 or 3 precepts, one has already begun paving the path to happiness for now and the future. Although the Theravada, the Mahayana, and the Vajrayana Buddhist traditions encourage followers to observe the 5 precepts fully, they also offer the choice of observing only some of the precepts, as according to the individual's ability. Whether you follow the Theravada, Mahayana, or Vajrayana tradition, if you wish to be a true Buddhist, you should take refuge in a Buddha, the Dharma, and a Sangha. One should take the precepts as one's teacher, to realize one's past misgivings and practice for a better future, to eradicate past bad habits and actively do good, to practice wholesome speech and action, and to diligently follow the Buddha's teachings to purify oneself of greed, hatred, and ignorance, thus accomplishing the teaching to avoid all evil, to do all good, and to purify the mind. Perfecting one's noble character, one becomes a complete human being and becomes a Buddha. The perfection of character is none other than the attainment